Salutations, people! Welcome to Page 3 Killers, Murders That Went Unnoticed, a podcast where we dive into murder cases that went unnoticed by the nation's newspapers.
Hi, Shay.
Hey, John!
Hi, people.
Hi, guys!
And welcome to episode 6, Page 3 Killers.
Six episodes?
Let me finish.
Okay.
Murders that went unnoticed.
Yes. So we have a really interesting case for you guys today. We have this story of Zack Bowen and Addie Hall.
So why do we have different intro music for today?
Well, today's case takes place in New Orleans. So I felt something a little bit more jazzy would be more appropriate.
Jazz hands. Yeah, I have no idea if the microphone can pick that up.
I don't think so. So this case takes place in 2006. So before we get into our world news,
we almost forgot.
Talk about our drink for today.
Welcome once again to the drink segment. This week, I'm not really sure how this is supposed to tie into our story, but we are in the middle of Mardi Gras. Well, what would be Mardi Gras if it wasn't for the vid. I know this is a very popular drink down south, and particularly in the party scene. Now, the way I'm making it today is the traditional way, and not the way a lot of people think about it in contemporary times. But what we're making is a daiquiri. And there's a little bit of a twist on this particular daiquiri. Nothing that ties in with our story, but something that tastes pretty tasty, in my opinion. We're going to start off with our rum, which is, in this particular drink, a dark rum. Usually you would use a white rum for a daiquiri, but there's a dark rum here. And then we have lime juice, and traditionally you would use simple syrup, which is just 1 part water, 1 part sugar. But I didn't have white sugar, and I was too lazy to go next door and buy some. So what we have honey water, which is the same ratio, 1 part honey to 1 part water, or 1 part water. And then really all you do is you just throw all that into a, I didn't give you amounts. So what you want to do is use the classic ratio of 2 to 1 to 1. If anyone ever gets into bartending or you ever talk to a bartender, this is a really important ratio. It's 2 parts spirit, which is our rum, 1 part sweetener, which is our sugar water, or our honey water in this case, and then 1 part sour, which is our lime juice. You can make 95% of the cocktails on planet Earth with just that ratio and mixing up the ingredients. But anyway, you take those ratios, however much you want, as long as it's in those ratios. You throw it into your tumbler with a bunch of ice, and you shake the crap out of it. And then you strain it right into your daiquiri glass. And in case you don't have a daiquiri glass like we don't, right into a wine glass or whatever you want to drink out of. And that's it.
Yeah. And I have to say, this is really tasty. I like it.
You're just saying that.
No, I really do like this drink. And it goes really great with the topic tonight.
And use fresh lime juice. Don't buy those little plastic limes with all the stabilizers inside of it. Just spend the 50 cents and get a real lime.
Yes, I recommend the real lime.
All right, let's get to what you people like.
Yes, let's get back to the show.
I feel like I need one of those little umbrellas and start popping it up and down as I march down the street now.
Have ourselves a little Mardi Gras parade in the house?
No, I'm going out in the street.
I'm sure our neighbors would appreciate it. All right.
World news.
World news. So this is 2006. We're going back to 2006.
I'm just out of high school.
Oh my goodness. That was my final year of high school, was 2006. Man, feels like a lifetime ago.
It was a while.
Yeah. So we have some really big news for 2006. So we came out of, you had Hurricane Katrina, I believe the end of the year before, right? I believe. So we had Hurricane Katrina.
Sounds about right.
In March, they released Twitter. They launched Twitter.
I wonder if that was Jack. Did Jack own Twitter from the very beginning? I don't know.
I don't know.
Jack's the CEO of Twitter, by the way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know who.
Everyone just calls him Jack.
Yeah, so Twitter was launched.
That's big news. I mean, it probably wasn't big news then. No one knew what Twitter was for a couple of years, probably.
Yeah, true. But I figured Twitter would be super important. Because everybody is on Twitter. Well, at least all the famous people are on Twitter. Which is why I'm not on Twitter.
I've never been on Twitter.
Never been on Twitter?
No, we should probably make a Twitter, though.
Yeah.
For the podcast.
Okay. If you guys want a Twitter, we'll start a Twitter, okay? Now, we also have the Augustin volcano in Alaska erupts twice, making it the first major eruption since Mount St. Helens in 1986.
Seems like a big deal. That's 20 years.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's, 20 years.
Yeah, so that's a major deal. Like,
but it's Alaska.
Yeah, true. There's not a lot of people
What's the
around.
lava gonna do? Freeze?
Not everything is cold in Alaska. I mean, it is pretty cold, but if it's during
If it's February 11th, it is cold everywhere in Alaska.
Yeah, it's January 11th when it erupts. So yeah, it was probably snowing.
January 11th.
Yeah, January.
Even worse.
Then October 9th, you have North Korea claims to have conducted its first ever nuclear test. We all know they were testing before then, but this was like the first time that they actually voiced that they were testing nuclear weapons.
Claims.
Yes, claims. We all know.
Was this before or after their dictator shot a hole-in-one on an entire golf course and then immediately retired afterwards because he couldn't do any better?
That's insane. Then we have Google purchased YouTube for $1.65 billion.
That seems like a deal.
That was a steal. It's probably worth triple that now.
I have no idea. I'm not in the market for buying large multinational companies.
Yeah. Then on November 5th, we have the former president of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, is sentenced to death by hanging by the Iraqi Special Tribunal.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then we have a sad bit of news. Everybody remember Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter? Yeah? You remember him?
Don't mess with rays, and they won't stab you.
Yes, he dies in a tragic accident filming The Ocean's Deadliest, which was a television show that they were producing, and he was stung and killed by a stingray off the coast of Australia.
If you ever question what the word irony means, that
and
is
you gotta
irony.
think, like, how many times did he get bit by a poisonous snake and nothing happened, and then it's just boom. When I actually heard about this, I didn't believe it. Because after so many close calls, I just assumed it was another close call. But no. Then, to finish up the year, the New Orleans Saints play their first game at the Superdome since Hurricane Katrina, with a victory of 23-3 over NFC South rival Atlanta Falcons.
It was rigged.
It was rigged?
NFL wanted them to win.
Yeah.
So what happens? Oh, it just so happened that the Patriots win right after 9/11, and it just so happens that the New Orleans Saints win right after the major Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. What a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's all rigged.
I mean, we just watched the last game. That's insane.
It's all rigged.
I feel like it too. Don't worry, babe. It's okay. We'll get over it. Now for the seedy side of 2006. Now, I only found a couple of cases for this. All right? These cases are pretty interesting. So we have in California, Clarence Ray Allen was sentenced to death for the 1982 case where he arranged to have 3 people murdered.
So he had a good run of it.
Yeah.
It was 24 years. Just
Yep.
kind of chilling out.
Yeah, and he was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Then we had Charles Carl Roberts, who was a 32-year-old.
The fourth.
The fourth, I'm sorry.
The first 3 don't appreciate that. They didn't kill no one.
Charles Carl Robert IV, a 32-year-old milk truck driver, kills 5 girls in an Amish schoolhouse in Lancaster County, PA, before shooting himself.
Oh, this is a big deal.
This was a huge deal around here. It was really big. I remember this.
Yeah, if you ever want to...
I remember
if you ever want to tear up, watch the interview with the parents afterwards.
Yeah.
They immediately go, "We forgive him."
That's insane.
Yeah.
I don't know if
But they're all Amish.
I could forgive somebody for doing that. I don't think I could.
This was immediately within days of it happening.
Yeah. Me personally, I would be like, there's a special place in hell for somebody that does this.
Yeah, they felt bad for
You
him.
know. All right. So we're now going to get into our case. Let's get started. Let me tell you about Addie Hall.
I thought that said Eddie Hall, like the World's Strongest Man guy.
No, this is Addie Hall, and she was a free-spirited artist that was living in New Orleans. She was known as a poet, an artist, a dancer.
And like all good artists, was
a great French Quarter bartender. She bartended at
because they can't sell their art, so they gotta make money somehow.
She bartended at the Spotted Cat, and I didn't get to look up where this is located, but I believe it was in the French Quarter because
Right.
they said that she worked and lived in the French Quarter.
That's cool.
Yeah. And she loved riding her bike around the quarter. And she easily made friends with everybody. And she had a nickname for herself. Or, people that lived and worked in the French Quarter, they called themselves quarter cans. So, someone who belongs in the quarter, in the French Quarter of New Orleans.
Huh. I like how they say belongs.
Yeah.
Who doesn't belong in the French Quarter?
Everybody belongs in the French Quarter.
So everybody's a quarter can.
Yes. That's actually a place that I want to visit, is New Orleans. I've heard it's seriously dangerous, though. For people to travel in because of just the drugs and crime right now. It's terrible.
Probably not the best.
Not very safe at night. Like they said, during the day, it's fine if you're staying in,
Who goes
on
to
the
New
French
Orleans
Quarter.
for something during the day?
I know. Everything happens at night. Now, Addie Hall was a great person. She was well-loved. Everybody liked her. She was friendly. The only problem she had in her life was her relationship with men. She did not choose necessarily the right people to give her heart to, let's say.
Well, judging by the fact that we're talking about her, I would tend to agree.
Yes. Now, we're going to talk about Zack Bowen. Now, he was a charming, charismatic, good-looking man who left an impression on everyone he met.
See, people say charming usually as like a compliment. Charming's not a compliment. Charming is like you're deceptive. You're trying to charm someone. You're trying to make them think of you something different than what you really are. Right? Salesmen are charming.
But Snow White had Prince Charming, right? Was it Snow White?
Yeah, who raped her?
Okay.
We ain't talking no Disney here. Prince Charming wasn't a Disney character first.
That's true.
Super charming. Wait till your girlfriend's knocked out and then get all up in that.
So, Zack grew up in California, so he had that laid-back surfer dude attitude. And now Zack married young. So he was married to a woman who was 10 years his senior named Lena. Lena and Zack had 2 children together, and to support them, he decides he's going to join up to the army.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Yeah, who just does that?
There's a lot of people who just do that. But doing it after you have 2 kids is brutal.
Yeah.
It's hard enough to have kids while you're in, let alone already having kids before you leave. That is rough.
Yeah. And I believe this is after 9/11, a few years after, so
Oh yeah,
you're going
right
into a war zone.
They're right in the middle of the sandbox.
Yeah, exactly. Now, he was stationed overseas in Iraq and then Kosovo. So
Kosovo's probably fine at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, not that Kosovo's ever really fine. But.
Yeah. But him and his wife, it was really tough for her, taking care of the kids while he was away. So she leaves with the kids.
As all army wives do.
Yes. Now,
no offense to any army wives.
Understandably, Zack was devastated. He was very lonely. He got out of the military and did moved to New Orleans to the French Quarter, and he would do odd jobs.
And it says there he had a general discharge.
Yeah, he had a general discharge.
That means he got done messed over.
Yeah.
The VA doesn't want anything to do with him. Doesn't get GI Bill.
Yep. So.
No benefits, nothing.
Yeah.
Been there, done that.
And
next.
So Zack suffers from some severe PTSD. So he has his issues, and he's trying to work his way through them. And if that was the extent of the story, there wouldn't be a case here. They would be living happily ever after in the French Quarter of New Orleans. But sadly, for Zack and Addie, that does not quite happen. Now I'm going to talk about Zack and Addie's relationship together. So they both met while bartending at the same bar, the Spotted Cat, in the French Quarter. And she would give him a hard time. She liked to be a ball buster, She would give him a hard time, but flirt at the same time. You know that kind of person, babe?
Nope.
No? You never met a redhead? Sort of that kind of...
Like The Little Mermaid?
Okay, no. She was sweet and adorable. Well, I guess Addie would be sweet and adorable. But we're about to get into this relationship. So you might not find it so sweet and adorable. Now, their relationship was tumultuous at best. They would break up, get back together. And it wasn't just Zack who had a bad side. Addie had a bit of a dark side as well. Okay? So she suffered from a bipolar disorder and regularly would stop taking her medication that treated her mental illness. and this would cause her to have angry, uncontrollable outbursts. So exactly the kind of unstable...
So what you're saying, it was a match made in heaven. PTSD and bipolar.
Yes. So those two things, you want to have somebody that's level and somebody that's maybe a little off. But when you put two people that have these kinds of issues together, it's going to be the bad news in the newspaper.
I bet you that bar was a ton of fun.
Oh, I bet. But we're not talking about the bar.
Oh, I was.
Many of Zack and Addie's friends remember the outrageous fights that they used to have. And these fights were usually fueled by drugs and alcohol.
Alcohol at a bar?
So Zack and Addie have been dating for a few weeks when one of the worst storms hits New Orleans, Louisiana. Hurricane Katrina. So they've been dating for, I believe it was about 6-7 weeks.
President Bush hates black people.
Yeah, so Hurricane Katrina hits New Orleans and the Gulf Coast in late August of 2005. Originally, Zack had every intention of leaving the city and staying with his estranged wife, Lena, so that he could avoid the storm. And the mass exodus was so severe and forewarned that Lena even welcomed Zack's girlfriend, Addie. She invited her to come stay with them so that she could be out of the storm. But Addie didn't want to leave the city. She wanted to be self-sufficient, stand on her own feet. She didn't want to run.
Like every other idiot who stayed inside New Orleans.
Yes.
Who stayed inside of a bowl while a bunch of water got poured into it.
Well, luckily, the flooding and the damage didn't really happen to the French Quarter. So that was spared the majority of the destruction of Hurricane Katrina. It didn't flood very much, and they maybe had some limbs down, some minor structure issues to some buildings, but the French Quarter was mainly untouched by the hurricane. So since Addie didn't want to leave the city, Zack decided to stay behind with her and wait out the Category 5 hurricane with, anybody else that stayed. Sound like a great idea for somebody with PTSD?
Well, I mean, it sounds like a terrible idea for anyone at any time.
Yes. Now,
especially when you have somewhere to actually go.
Yeah. And I just can't believe that she just, turned her nose up and snubbed the idea of staying with somebody else. I think maybe it had something to do with the fact that it was his ex-wife. Might have had something to do with it. Addie didn't want to, be stuck in a place that was unfamiliar to her with somebody else that shared a history with Zack.
I guess.
Yeah. Especially, if they're in a new relationship. I don't know any woman that wants to spend a prolonged period of time in a house with their current boyfriend's ex.
It's all about priorities.
True. I mean, if your priority is to survive, definitely go stay with the ex-wife.
Exactly.
Now, the Category 5 hurricane hits New Orleans directly, leaving lots of flooding and nearly 2,000 fatalities in its wake. And like I said, the majority of the historic French Quarter was unscathed, except for, some downed tree limbs, some broken signage, and some scattered debris. Zack and Addie gathered together with the other people in the French Quarter that decided to wait out the storm. And they started living this life of like a post-apocalyptic world where, you know, you're collectively cooking together over a campfire, drinking booze out of, you know, dirty coolers, and just staying up late singing songs around a fire, which is actually what they were doing after the hurricane. They were so swept up in the romance of it all that they completely were oblivious to what was going down at the Superdome. When they were interviewed by a magazine, they actually got put in the magazine. Their pictures were taken, and it was kind of a, you know, big thing for them to be on in this magazine.
Death, destruction, and carnage surrounding us. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. So...
Want a hot dog?
Yeah, so they were photographed together and interviewed by national magazines and newspapers. And weeks later, when the lights were turned on and the city began the lengthy cleanup process, the romantic honeymoon was over. And they went back to the same reckless relationship they had before. The fighting, the excessive alcohol and drugs. And a lot of people said that it was really the responsibility of life, that the lack of responsibility with life is what drew them together during Hurricane Katrina. The fact that they didn't have to worry about anything else except for the moment. They didn't have to like worry about thinking about bills and home and all that kind of stuff. Responsibilities. Didn't have to go to work.
Sounds great. Didn't have to record podcasts.
Listen, buddy. You sit here once a week. And a lot of other people said that, you know, Addie realized she didn't want the responsibility of Zack's ex-wife and children.
She didn't need that.
She didn't want those relationships. Now, they had to get back to regular life now, weeks after Hurricane Katrina. So the responsibilities returned, and all the bills started piling up for the two. So Zack and Addie really missed that time in their life, the hurricane. But at the same time that they were living this life post-hurricane, Zack was becoming increasingly hard to console as military vehicles began to, you know, move around the city after the destruction of Hurricane Katrina. And his PTSD started to get triggered quite a bit. With the natural high of the hurricane gone from their lives, they went looking for highs in other places. Like I said, they started doing more drugs, drinking more alcohol, and their violent fights started to happen more frequently, and the two began to drift apart. So what they decide to do is reignite their life together. They decide to get a new apartment. And this apartment is on Rampart Street, right above the famed Voodoo Temple. They made an offer on the place right away, and they started to move in. Now, no sooner than they unpacked, Addie was already down at the landlord asking to have just her name on the lease. She wanted to have Zack's name removed. And the landlord was like, okay, sure. And he said that the reason why she wanted to remove Zack's name off of the lease was because she found out he was cheating on her, and that she decided that was the last straw. She was done with him. So the landlord wrote out a handwritten contract and asked Addie to sort out her own personal life, you know, and just hope that everything would get back to normal. They would be okay and just move on. But Zack learns about this, and he gets so angry that he is inconsolable. And that's where this is starting to take a dangerous turn.
I guess I just don't understand these people.
Yeah. Just wait until you hear what the rest of this case is. This is where we're going to get into the gory details. So, buckle up your seatbelts, guys. Now, I told you guys it was 2006, but let me be more specific. It is currently, at this time for Zack and Addie, it is Thursday, October 5th, 1 o'clock a.m. Zack strangles his girlfriend, Addie Hall, to death in a drunken stupor, and then he falls asleep next to her corpse on the futon. If that was it, this wouldn't be that compelling of a case. This wouldn't interest you guys at all. This would be cut dry. But this is not where it ends. The next day, he goes to work, and his co-workers remember him acting all out of sorts. He was walking around wearing sunglasses, a hat, and he was very quiet. You know, not his normal, charming, joking self. Over the next several days, Zack starts cutting up Addie's body in their bathtub with a hacksaw and a knife, and starts scattering the pieces of her corpse around the kitchen, mostly on the top of the stove and in the refrigerator.
Of all the places to hide a body,
Yes.
everywhere is probably not the best place.
Yeah, I would think one place would suffice.
And not in the house.
Yeah, maybe somewhere, you know, like, I don't know, a bayou. I believe that's like what, the graveyard of the South, the bayou? At least, the graveyard of the South when you want to hide a dead body. Not only that, he gave her a haircut and placed her head inside of a pot on the front of the stove. Placed her hands and feet inside of another pot on the back burner, and her legs and arms in a roasting pan inside the oven.
This seems to be a recurring theme with you. You keep on picking these people like to cook other people.
I didn't say he cooked her. He just stuck her in the pots.
So tartare?
There's no heat involved. I do not believe that he actually cooks her.
That's what tartare is.
Oh, raw. Got it. Sorry. Once he's done that, he places her torso in a plastic trash bag in the fridge, and he would deal with it later. Apparently, his intention was to separate the bone from flesh to make it easier to dispose of. And many people speculate that at the time there was intentions of cannibalism, but the autopsy reports confirmed that there was no signs of that at all. So no teeth marks on the corpse, none of that. But they do suspect that he may have engaged in some necrophilia with her corpse.
Oh, because that's much better.
Yeah. I know, guys. I know. Now, at this time, Addie's friends and co-workers where they worked were beginning to ask Zack where she was. You know, what's going on? We haven't seen Addie in a while. It's not like her. He told them she left and went to North Carolina. And a lot of people were surprised because she loved New Orleans. And they didn't think that she would ever leave New Orleans.
You could say she could die for it.
That's true. But at the same time, people weren't really shocked because Addie was very unpredictable. And she would tend to run away from situations that were out of her control, like Zack, for instance. But little did they know that Zack knew exactly where she was, and he knew exactly what he had done to her.
Did he, though?
Yeah, because he kind of goes back to that apartment every day. So that's another thing. Like, how could you do that and then go back to the apartment for 7 days?
Drugs.
That's true. Alcohol and drugs, I guess.
There's an awful lot of behaviors that can be explained with one word.
Yeah.
Drugs.
So, he murdered her on October 5th. Now, on the evening of Tuesday, October 17th, 2006, this is nearly 2 weeks after he's murdered and dismembered his girlfriend, Zack Bowen commits suicide. He jumps from the 7th floor of the Omni Royal Hotel in New Orleans, and he left a handwritten note and his dog tags in the back pocket of his pants in a plastic bag. A little considerate. Didn't want to get no blood on those. No?
He wanted someone to know about it.
Yeah. And he also had the key to their apartment in his front pocket.
Where are these people's parents?
I would assume back home from the states that they're from, California, and I believe her parents were from North Carolina.
Alright, they can't be too old.
Yeah. They weren't. I'll show you a picture. They were not that old at all, which makes this really, really sad.
You thought he was probably, what, like 20s?
Yeah, they're in their 20s. That is Zack Bowen.
Oh, he actually looks normal. She looks like a dirty hippie. Someone who is obviously an art student who has no real job. I shouldn't say no real job. Who doesn't have a job in art. Bartending is a real job.
He jumped off of this building, committed suicide, left a suicide note. The letter read, police only, and it led the detectives to their home and Zack and Addie's landlord for questioning. Once they were there, they quickly discovered the contents of Zack's letter was in fact true. As the police walked into the disheveled apartment...
Why would he just casually lie about it, though? Like, what? They read the letter and like, I bet she's good, just kidding.
I don't know what the police were thinking. Like, I would just assume that anybody who's going to write this kind of suicide letter would be telling the truth. The police walk into their disheveled apartment filled with unopened boxes, and the first thing they noticed was the temperature in the apartment and the lack of smell. The air conditioner was set to below 60 degrees and was on full blast. Cops said that it felt like a meat locker inside.
That landlord's going to be pissed.
With that electric bill, hell yes. There was no smell of rotting flesh in anywhere. The bathroom, they said, where he dismembered her body, was super clean. There was not a speck of lingering blood. And on the walls, in silver-colored spray paint, were these words: I love her, I'm a total failure, and finally, look in the oven, with an arrow pointing at the stove door. Next, the police officers discover her remains, stuffed into various pots, pans. Now, they did publish portions of his suicide letter in the articles that I read, so I have those here for you guys. Starts off with, this is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took. If you send a patrol car to 826 North Rampart, you will find the dismembered corpse of my girlfriend, Addie, in the oven, on the stove, and in the fridge, and a full signed confession from myself, Zack Bowen. That's how the letter starts out. When they found it in his pocket, his body on top of the parking garage that's next to the hotel. At the scene of Addie's murder, they find her journal with writings added from Zack. So he continued to write in her journal, like her diary almost. So he writes, today is Monday, October 16th, 2 a.m. I killed her at 1 a.m. Thursday, October 5th. I very calmly strangled her. It was very quick. Halfway through the task, I stopped and thought about what I was doing. The decision to halt the first idea and move to Plan B, the crime scene you are now in, came after a while. I scared myself not by the actions of calmly strangling the woman I've loved for 1.5 years, and then dissecting her body, but my entire lack of remorse. I've known forever how horrible of a person I am, ask anyone, and decided to quit my job and spend the $1,500 cash I had being happy until I kill myself. So that's what I did. Good food, good drugs, good strippers, good friends, and any loose ends I may have had. I didn't contact any of my family, so that'll explain the shock. And had a fantastic time living out my days. It's just about time now. So that's a little disturbing.
Seems legit.
Yeah. It's so sad because you can tell that he's struggling with not just what he did, but just everything else. It's really sad. And I do not feel bad for a lot of people who kill, but I kind of feel bad for this guy. You know? Because it seemed like this could have all been avoided if he had the help that he needed, instead of a bunch of friends who would just let him see everything that was going on and just let it go.
Would have all been avoided if he just didn't join an army.
I wish everything was that simple. After all of this happens, the Voodoo Spiritual Temple, which is the place that sits underneath their apartment at 826 North Rampart Street, which is owned by Priestess Miriam. It was known that the Voodoo Spiritual Temple was known as a respected cultural establishment of New Orleans. So they have like deep roots, you know, with the Voodoo Haitian, like, is it the Haitian Voodoo?
Yeah, there's a lot of Haitian voodoo down there.
Yeah. So it's a big part of the culture down there. Many started to claim that the dark voodoo history of the location had something to do with Zack's, basically his PTSD and mental illness and his violent outbursts. So they were like, oh, somebody did voodoo and, you know, he just absorbed all of that dark energies, and that's what made him do it. But that is purely coincidental. So voodoo in general is actually a healing and kind spiritual practice that is well respected in the city. And I believe you and I listened to a documentary, or it was like another podcaster. He does history, and he did one.
Our Fake History.
Our Fake History, where I love that guy. And he did one on Madame LaVey.
Yes.
Madame LaVey, who was the
Voodoo
queen of New Orleans. And if you guys get a chance, listen to that, and that'll describe what voodoo really was about.
Yeah, the first episode goes into a pretty big explanation and history of voodoo in general.
Yeah.
It's a 3-part series.
It's a really good one to start with. So, police say, listen, there's nothing supernatural about this. It was just Zack's own personal demons, not the conjuring of any demons by any voodoo priestess.
It was clearly the voodoo, not the fact that he got sent overseas, was subjected to a war, and probably saw a bunch of people get blown up, had to kill people, probably had to deal with child rapists. Yeah. That doesn't affect him at all. It's all the voodoo.
Yeah. And in actuality, the Voodoo Spiritual Temple was, like I said, a very peaceful, spiritual place for healing. And
that's what they want you to think.
Yeah. And Priestess Miriam and her husband, they started that back in 1990. They moved to the Rampart Street in 1991. And they remained there until February of 2016. When a fire broke out and destroyed much of that building. Which is 10 years after this.
Told you it was a voodoo.
And I did read up a lot about the Voodoo Temple, and it was apparently a very beautiful building. It had like a Creole cottage in the back, and it had like, it was built in 1829, and it was handed down and sold over the years, and then listed on the city registry as 826 North Rampart Street. Tenants of the apartment since 2006, would say that they started to experience some paranormal activity. Feelings of being watched, voices. They felt like the walls were pressing in on them. Just general creepy, bad behavior of ghosts, I guess. And currently, that property is being leased by another voodoo priestess who opened it up and turned it into a museum for the paranormal, and she hosts tours of the apartment. So you can now go in and visit the apartment where Zack killed Addie.
How romantic.
I know. Sounds like something we should do.
Probably not.
And the Voodoo Spiritual Temple, they moved to right down the street to 1428 North Rampart, across the street from Congo Square. Now, since we have dispersed any belief in the paranormal in this, the only thing that we're left with is his service in the military and his PTSD. Zack was an active member in the military in Iraq and Kosovo pre 9/11.
They said he was in there after 9/11.
Post 9/11, and immediately following. He joined up before, and then he was overseas after 9/11. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Correction, it was...
So he was actually in Kosovo when it was being bombed?
Yes.
Okay, because that was before 9/11.
And a lot of other soldiers said that, he was really traumatized by some of his friends who were killed in action.
Voodoo.
As well as he witnessed the death of a child who he befriended that was killed for simply conversating with American soldiers. They would like hand out chocolate to the kids in these like towns and all, and insurgents just like killed them for it. That's sad. Now, if that wasn't enough, he also had some other gripes with the military. He suffered from this thing called hammer toe, which was because he was issued boots that did not fit him. And they pressed against his toe and caused, like, some really bad, like, painful, like, issues with his big, like, the big toe on his feet.
I'm pretty sure that's been rectified in recent years.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure now they give them the correct size boot.
Oh, well, because at least when I was in, there was, like, 4 different dimensions of boot.
Yeah.
Like, they would take, like, how wide your foot was, how long your foot was, and then you just build up right along your Achilles. That's the only part that sucked.
Yeah.
You would always get
It would rub.
Oh yeah, that was terrible for like a week. Like your Achilles on both feet would just ugh.
Yeah, it's like breaking in new shoes, like new heels, ladies, right?
Except for you're literally not allowed to wear anything else.
Yeah. So all of these combined together to make him a very disgruntled person. So he was not happy in the military.
that just describes everyone in the military. Disgruntled.
So he decides that he wants to go home. So he purposely fails his health and fitness test so that they will ship him home.
Oh, I know so many people who failed that crap. You got lucky. They'll just tell him, try again, try harder next time. We ain't letting you go home.
Yeah. And at the same time, what probably, added to all of this was that his wife, Lena, at the time, was diagnosed with hepatitis C, and she was very, very sick.
See, that's messed up, yeah. My dad had hep C.
Yeah. So he wanted to go home, he wanted to take care of his family. He was not happy in the military. So he gets his general discharge, loses all of his health benefits, which is utterly ridiculous to me. Like, you're going to send him home. He's been in a war situation, and he's going to go home and have nothing from the military to help stabilize him.
Well, theoretically, he would still have some VA health benefits. I mean, they're not good. And this certainly not back in 2005, 2006. They were probably just atrocious. Everybody was getting out of the military after being in Iraq, and they're all fucked up.
Yeah. So he gets home. His wife ends up leaving him and all of that. So he makes his way to New Orleans, where he starts having a hard time transitioning back into civilian life. He's been in the military since before 9/11, which is 2001. So he's been in the military since 2001.
At least.
He's been in there a couple of years. And they just send him home.
Yeah,
he has no help met for his mental illness caused by being in the military. Now, I did a little research on PTSD. So there were a couple of things there was a study done in 2014 called the JAMA, and it cited that 1 in 4 active duty members of the military show signs of mental health conditions that need to be treated. And those 3 major mental health conditions are PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, and traumatic brain injury, TBI. Now, the PTSD is usually from like combat, assault, disasters, and sexual abuse, and a long-lasting negative effects on somebody's mental health. Causes you to have sleeping issues, anger, nightmares, jumpiness, and people that suffer from PTSD often have trouble with alcohol and drugs because it it's sort of like self-medication for the symptoms of PTSD. Then you have depression. Most people think of it as clinical depression, which is the general feeling of sadness and despair. But there are some other, there's much more to it than that. Depression interferes with your normal everyday life and is not something that you can just get over on your own. Now, the traumatic brain injury, the TBI, is caused by significant blows to the head and or body in combat, which can include severe headaches, fatigue, drowsiness, memory problems, and mood swings. Without proper treatment, those things get worse. And we know from everything that Zack was struggling with PTSD, and having stayed in New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina probably re-traumatized him. So you had, a highly dangerous situation in the city at the time. It's a Category 5 hurricane. Yeah, and you had to think, are you going to survive a hurricane? And they believe that this had a profound effect on the state of his mind, which was already in a very delicate place to begin with. So as the days, weeks, and months went on, coupled with the severe alcohol and drug abuse that him and Addie were doing ritually, like almost every day, they compounded with the symptoms he was already suffering from and were left untreated. But it's just a shame that these two people, great people apart, they themselves were like a hurricane together. Just violent, up and down, crazy. And it's a shame. If they had never met, they would probably both still be alive.
Maybe.
Or maybe he just goes and kills someone else.
Yeah. So it's really sad. Sorry to bring you guys down.
Yeah, as I listen to a podcast about killing people. That's what we're worried about. Bring them down.
So just some quick reminders, guys. Some updates. We are up on Patreon. Up on Facebook. So remember to like, share, and subscribe to these videos.
Leave us a review.
Yes, leave us some comments. We would like some comments. Tell us what you guys like, what you don't like. Any cases that you guys want to hear about.
Hey, that's only for Patreon members.
Oh, that's right. We have some special...
Oh, you can tell us, but we ain't going to listen to it.
We have a thing set up on Patreon. So we did the levels. So you can...
At the top tier level, you get to tell us what to do.
Yeah, you get to pick an episode. I'll let you pick an episode maybe like quarterly. We'll do like a
Depends on how many...
members only episode.
Well, no, everyone gets to hear
member
it.
chosen episode.
Yeah, it depends on how many patrons we get.
Yeah. So we got that going, guys. And then shortly we will be uploading some new content, which is our headline minis, which are the news cases, the biggest news cases.
They might already be out by the time this is released.
Yeah, true. They will be episodes on the big news cases that kicked our news stories to the third page.
So I think
All right,
need to wrap
we
up.
want to close it out, babe?
Oh, no, you don't want to close this out. You got the catchphrase.
All right. Don't be pushy, boy. Remember, guys, stay sexy and don't get murdered. Hey guys, I wanted to take a moment before you guys leave this podcast today to just talk to you guys about a very important thing. Zack Bowen was suffering from PTSD. If you or a loved one or someone you know is suffering with this, who is a veteran, please reach out to the Veterans Crisis Hotline. They are available 24/7. This number will be posted in our link in our bio down below beneath this video.